You all think your retirement plan of sitting on the porch complaining about your joints is going to actually pay the bills. Spoiler alert, your knees don't write checks, and the economy doesn't care about your back pain. Get to work.
Welcome back. Look, let's be brutally honest for a second. We're all tired. The corporate ladder is broken, inflation is treating our wallets like a chew toy, and sitting around watching cable news is just going to spike your blood pressure. But what if the weird little obsession you hide in your garage could actually fund your next vacation? Or at least pay for the groceries? We aren't talking about getting a second job flipping burgers. We are talking about monetizing your sanity. Here are 30 adult hobbies that actually make real, foldable cash in the real world. No fluff, no pyramid schemes, just pure, cynical capitalism mixed with a little bit of elbow grease. Hobby 1. Beekeeping. Let's start with the one where you literally wear a hazmat suit. Most people spend their weekends aggressively avoiding anything with a stinger, but if you're brave enough to put on a white spacesuit in July, the payoff is essentially liquid gold. A couple of hives in your backyard can produce a ridiculous amount of raw, craft honey and natural beeswax. You take those jars down to the local farmer's market, slap a rustic, handwritten label on them, and suddenly you're charging premium prices to hipsters who think supermarket honey is a government conspiracy. The bees do 90% of the heavy lifting, you provide the wooden housing, and somehow you walk away with the profit. It's the ultimate landlord situation, just with millions of tiny, buzzing tenants who occasionally stab you. Hobby 2. Foraging for wild mushrooms. You know what's crazy? High-end restaurants will pay absolutely absurd amounts of money for fungus that you found growing on a rotting log in the woods. Foraging isn't just for survivalists waiting for the apocalypse anymore. It's a legitimate cash grab. We are talking about morels, chanterelles, and truffles. Chefs in fancy metropolitan bistros need these rare, earthy ingredients to justify charging $40 for a plate of pasta. If you learn how to identify the right mushrooms, and more importantly, how to not accidentally poison the local culinary elite, you can turn a quiet Sunday hike into a highly profitable treasure hunt. It's basically adult Easter egg hunting, but the eggs are lumpy, brown, and smell like dirt. Hobby 3. Growing microgreens. Do you have a basement, a garage, or a spare closet that currently houses your broken exercise bike? Congratulations, you have a farm. Microgreens are those tiny, pretentious little leaves that chefs use to garnish expensive salmon, and they grow insanely fast. We are talking about a turnaround time of like 2 weeks from seed to harvest. You grow them on simple racks under cheap LED shop lights. The restaurant industry buys them by the pound because they look pretty and taste like concentrated health. You are essentially selling overpriced grass to culinary artists. It requires almost zero physical labor, just a little bit of watering, some basic humidity control, and the willingness to text local chefs until they buy your tiny arugula. Hobby 4. Worm farming. Yes, you heard that right. We are monetizing dirt and worms. Vermicomposting is the dark, slightly gross secret of the gardening world. You buy a couple of plastic bins, throw in some red wiggler worms, and feed them your kitchen scraps and old newspapers. What they produce in return is worm castings, which is a polite, scientific term for worm poop. Organic gardeners and crazy plant people will pay premium prices for this stuff because it is the absolute best natural fertilizer on the planet. It's a completely silent, odor-free pet that eats your garbage and poops out profit. You can sell the fertilizer, and eventually, you can even sell the extra worms to fishermen or other crazy people who want to start their own bins. Hobby 5. Breeding exotic aquarium shrimp. Welcome to the weird, microscopic world of aquatic real estate. We aren't talking about the boring goldfish you won at the county fair. We are talking about high-end, genetically mutated, neon-colored freshwater shrimp. Varieties like the Crystal Red or the Blue Dream. Hobbyists will pay $20, $50, or even $100 for a single shrimp that is the size of your pinky fingernail. You set up a few heavily planted tanks in your living room, get the water parameters exactly right, and then you just let them breed. They eat algae, they mind their own business, and they multiply. You carefully scoop them into specialized shipping bags and mail them to desperate aquarium nerds across the country. Hobby 6. Building closed terrariums. People working in sterile corporate cubicles are desperate for a tiny piece of nature that they don't have to remember to water. Enter the closed terrarium. You take a beautiful glass jar, layer some gravel, charcoal, and dirt, and plant some humidity-loving moss and ferns inside. Once you seal it, it creates its own water cycle and basically lives forever without human intervention. You are playing God in a jar. You sell these miniature ecosystems to office workers who want to look at something green while they pretend to work on spreadsheets. The materials cost next to nothing, literally rocks and moss, but the aesthetic value is huge, allowing for a massive markup at local craft fairs. Hobby 7. Bonsai cultivation. This is not a hobby. This is an exercise in extreme, agonizing patience. Growing a bonsai tree is basically torturing a normal tree into staying tiny over the course of several years. But here is the cynical truth. Older, established bonsai trees sell for thousands of dollars to wealthy collectors who want to look enlightened. You buy cheap nursery stock, junipers or maples, prune the roots, wire the branches into dramatic, wind-swept shapes, and put them in a shallow, expensive-looking pot. It takes years to mature, but the daily maintenance is minimal. It's an investment portfolio that requires watering. When you finally sell one, you are cashing in on your own sheer, stubborn refusal to let a tree grow normally. Hobby 8. Breeding carnivorous plants. Orchids are for amateurs. Real adults grow plants that eat meat. Venus flytraps, pitcher plants, and sundews are highly sought after by collectors who have a slightly morbid streak. They are surprisingly finicky to grow. They need distilled water, nutrient-poor soil, and lots of light, which means most normal people kill them within a week. That is your market advantage. If you can figure out how to propagate them from seed or cuttings, you can sell rare cultivars for excellent money. There is a massive online community of people who are willing to drop serious cash on a plant that literally digests flies. It's a botanical freak show, and you are the ringmaster selling the tickets. Hobby 9. Rare houseplant propagation. Remember during the pandemic when everyone decided their living room needed to look like the Amazon rainforest? That market is still booming, but only for the rare stuff. You don't need a greenhouse. A couple of wire racks and some decent grow lights will do. You buy one highly sought-after, wildly expensive plant, like a variegated monstera that looks like someone spilled white paint on it. You let it grow, chop the stem into pieces, root those cuttings in water or moss, and suddenly your one expensive plant has become 10 expensive plants. You sell those rooted cuttings on Facebook groups to desperate plant addicts. You are literally printing money from leaves. Hobby 10. Micro-roasting specialty coffee. Americans run on anxiety and caffeine. If you can provide a superior version of the latter, you will never go broke. Buying raw, green coffee beans in bulk is shockingly cheap because they taste like dirt and last forever. The magic happens when you buy a small home roaster and learn how to coax out the flavors without burning the beans to a crisp. You create a dark, oily espresso roast or a fruity light roast, bag it in slick, minimalist packaging, and sell it locally. People will happily pay $20 a bag if you tell them the beans were sung to by monks in Colombia. It smells amazing, the margins are excellent, and your customers literally develop a chemical dependency on your product.
Look at you, 10 hobbies in, and you're still sitting there waiting for motivation to strike. Motivation is a myth invented by people trying to sell you self-help books. Fear of outliving your retirement savings, now that is a real motivator. Keep taking notes, meatbags.
Hobby 11. Crafting artisanal beef jerky. Let's move to the ultimate masculine snack. Supermarket jerky is mostly just salt, preservatives, and regret packaged in plastic. Real adults want thick-cut, heavily marinated, slow-dried beef. You buy a decent dehydrator, slice up some lean cuts of meat, and drown them in a secret marinade of soy sauce, liquid smoke, and maybe a terrifying amount of ghost pepper. Once it's dried, it shrinks down, intensifying the flavor. Because it's a high-protein, low-carb snack, gym bros, hikers, and people on weird diets will throw money at you. The raw ingredients aren't cheap, but craft jerky commands a premium price. You are essentially removing water from meat and charging double for the privilege. Hobby 12. Fermenting hot sauces and kombucha. Fermentation is just controlled rotting that tastes delicious. It sounds dangerous, but it's actually incredibly safe and absurdly profitable. For hot sauce, you mash up some habaneros, garlic, and salt, put it in a jar, and let bacteria do the work for a month. Blend it with some vinegar, put a skull on the label, and hot sauce fanatics will buy it just to see if it makes them cry. Kombucha is the same deal. Fermented tea that smells mildly like feet, but sells for $5 a bottle to yoga instructors because of probiotics. The overhead is glass bottles and patience. You are bottling bacteria and selling it for a massive markup. Hobby 13. High-end woodworking. There's something deeply therapeutic about taking a massive, heavy piece of dead tree and turning it into a slightly smaller, very expensive cutting board. Americans have a weird obsession with heavy wooden objects. If you have a garage and a table saw, you can churn out edge-grain cutting boards, floating shelves, or mid-century modern coffee tables. The key is to use exotic woods like walnut or padauk so it looks expensive. People are sick of cheap, flat-pack furniture that falls apart when you look at it wrong. They want heavy, oiled wood that looks like it was chopped down by a lumberjack. It's loud, it makes a ton of sawdust, and it pays incredibly well. Hobby 14. Carving custom wood signs. This is a spin-off of woodworking, but it requires less engineering and more typography. Go to any wealthy suburb or rural ranch, and you will see massive, heavy wooden signs swinging over driveways, proudly displaying the family name. You can use a manual router or a CNC machine to carve names, business logos, or cynical quotes into slabs of cedar or pine. Paint the letters black, seal the wood so it survives the rain, and ship it out. It taps into people's vanity and their desire to mark their territory. A custom-carved sign feels permanent, and customers are willing to pay top dollar to have their surname permanently gouged into a piece of oak. Hobby 15. Laser engraving family recipes. This is the ultimate emotionally manipulative holiday gift, which makes it a goldmine. You buy a desktop laser engraver, which are surprisingly affordable now. People send you a cell phone picture of their deceased grandmother's famous apple pie recipe, written in her actual, messy, cursive handwriting. You use software to trace that handwriting, and the laser burns it permanently into a nice wooden cutting board. It makes people cry on Christmas morning, which means it's a flawless product. It takes you about 10 minutes of computer work and 20 minutes of the laser burning the wood while you drink a beer. High emotional value equals high profit margin. Hobby 16. Minimalist leatherworking. Working with full-grain leather is the grown-up version of arts and crafts. It smells fantastic, and the tools look like medieval surgical instruments. Nobody wants those bulky, terrible wallets from the department store that ruin your posture. They want slim, hand-stitched, minimalist card holders made from Italian leather that will outlast their owners. You cut the leather, punch the holes by hand, and stitch it using thick, waxed thread. You can stamp the buyer's initials into it to make it custom. The materials cost a fraction of the selling price, but because it takes genuine skill and patience, people view it as a luxury good. You are selling durability in a disposable world. Hobby 17. Crafting premium dog collars. If there is one thing Americans will blindly throw money at, it is their dogs. People will complain about a $5 coffee and then buy a $70 artisanal collar for a golden retriever named Buster. You can make these out of thick leather or a material called biothane, which is totally waterproof and indestructible. Add some heavy-duty brass hardware, maybe rivet a custom nameplate onto it, and you have a premium product. It takes very little time to assemble, but because you are targeting the obsessive pet parent demographic, the price ceiling is remarkably high. Your market is literally people who love their animals more than they love most humans. Hobby 18. Professional Knife Sharpening. Most households in America are operating with kitchen knives so dull they couldn't cut through warm butter without a struggle. It is a national tragedy. If you invest in a good set of Japanese whetstones or a high-end belt sharpening system, you can offer a mobile or drop-off sharpening service. Professional chefs, amateur cooks, and hunters need their blades terrifyingly sharp. You charge $5 to $10 an inch, and it takes you maybe 5 minutes per knife once you know what you are doing. It is pure, skill-based income. You take a useless, dangerous piece of dull steel and make it lethal again. It's highly satisfying, incredibly necessary, and pure profit. Hobby 19. Furniture Flipping. You know that horrific, scratched-up, orange-toned dresser sitting on the curb that smells vaguely of mothballs and despair? That is your new ATM machine. Furniture flipping is the art of seeing potential in garbage. You load that ugly dresser into your truck, take it home, sand off the terrible 1980s varnish, paint it a trendy matte navy blue, change the brass hardware, and suddenly it's a mid-century modern statement piece. You take a few well-lit photos, put it on Facebook Marketplace, and sell it for 5 times what you paid. You are getting paid handsomely to rescue solid wood furniture from the landfill and exploit current interior design trends. Hobby 20. Vintage Audio Restoration. Audiophiles are a strange, wealthy breed of humans who believe that music only sounds good if it's played through incredibly heavy, obsolete electronics. Vintage turntables from the 70s and 80s, heavy, silver-faced receivers, and massive wooden speakers are highly sought after. You scour thrift stores and estate sales for broken units. Usually they just need the dust blown out, a few capacitors replaced, or some contact cleaner sprayed into the volume knobs to stop the static. You clean the brushed aluminum faceplates until they shine, test the channels, and flip them to guys having a midlife crisis who want to listen to Pink Floyd on vinyl. The markup is astronomical.
Look at the time. You're 2/3 of the way through this video and you haven't started a single one of these projects. You're just sitting there, absorbing information like a sponge that never actually cleans the dishes. Time is ticking, friend. The graveyard is full of people who are going to start a business tomorrow.
Hobby 21. Kintsugi Pottery Restoration. Kintsugi is the ancient Japanese art of fixing broken pottery with a special lacquer dusted with powdered gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, you highlight them, making the broken piece more beautiful and valuable than it was before. It is incredibly poetic, and more importantly, people in the US will pay you a fortune to do it. When someone drops their grandmother's heirloom vase, they are desperate. They don't want to throw it away. You take the pieces, carefully glue them back together using the gold-laced resin, and return a masterpiece. You are charging a premium for emotional rescue and a heavy dose of artistic aesthetic. It requires a steady hand and zero heavy lifting. Hobby 22. Antique Book Binding and Restoration. Physical books are making a massive comeback because looking at screens all day is destroying our souls. But old books fall apart. The spines crack, the pages detach, and the leather rots. Bookbinding is a quiet, meticulous desk hobby. You use specialized glues, heavy presses, and bone folders to repair torn pages and create completely new, gorgeous leather or cloth covers with gold foil stamping. You can either restore rare antiques for collectors or take cheap, popular paperback fantasy novels and bind them into luxurious hardcovers for superfans. Fanatics will drop hundreds of dollars on a custom-bound version of their favorite wizard book. Hobby 23. Freelance voice acting. Do you have a deep, gravelly voice? Or maybe an overly enthusiastic, corporate-friendly tone? You can monetize your vocal cords. You don't need to move to Hollywood. You just need a decent microphone, a closet lined with acoustic foam to kill the echo, and a platform like Amazon ACX or Fiverr. Independent authors are desperate to turn their self-published romance novels or sci-fi thrillers into audiobooks. Small businesses need voiceovers for their terrible YouTube ads. You get paid per finished hour of audio. You literally sit in the dark, read someone else's words out loud, edit out the parts where you coughed or stumbled, and wait for the direct deposit. Hobby 24. Digital photo restoration. Everyone has a shoebox full of old, cracked, faded photographs of their ancestors looking stern and uncomfortable. Those memories are slowly degrading into dust. If you know your way around Photoshop or modern AI-assisted editing tools, you can offer digital restoration. Clients scan and email you their ripped, water-damaged photos. You sit on your couch with a laptop, digitally stitch the tears back together, correct the faded sepia tones, and maybe even colorize them. You charge per photo. It's a completely digital business with zero inventory, zero shipping costs, and a massive emotional payoff for the client. You are essentially a time traveler with a clone stamp tool. Hobby 25. Genealogy research. People are obsessed with proving they are vaguely related to European royalty or famous outlaws. But navigating census records, old ship manifests, and confusing digital archives is tedious work that most people give up on after an hour. If you love history and solving puzzles, you can become a freelance genealogist. Clients pay you to build their family trees, hunt down birth certificates, and trace their lineage back through the centuries. It requires deep research skills, a subscription to a few major database websites, and the patience to read terrible 19th century cursive. You package the history into a beautiful PDF or printed book, hand it over, and collect a very handsome fee for playing digital detective. Hobby 26. Plotter crafting and decals. Let's talk about machines doing the work for you. A vinyl cutting machine, like a Cricut or Silhouette, is essentially a printer that uses a tiny blade instead of ink. You design a witty, sarcastic phrase or a cool logo on your computer, and the machine perfectly cuts it out of adhesive vinyl. You iron that vinyl onto t-shirts, canvas tote bags, or stick it onto coffee mugs. Bachelorette parties, local sports teams, and small businesses always need custom gear in small batches that big print shops won't touch. You dominate the local custom market. The machine whirs away in the background while you catch up on podcasts, and the profit margins on cheap blank t-shirts are excellent. Hobby 27. Clothing repair and custom embroidery. Fast fashion is garbage, and people are finally realizing that throwing away a good denim jacket just because it has a hole in it is stupid. If you know how to use a sewing machine, you possess a dying art. You can offer high-end repair services, tailoring, or custom embroidery. You take a boring vintage Levi's jacket and spend a few evenings embroidering a massive, intricate skull or a floral pattern on the back panel. Suddenly, a $20 thrift store find is a $200 custom streetwear piece. You are taking cheap textiles, injecting them with hours of skilled labor, and selling them to fashion-conscious people who want to look unique. Hobby 28. Resin and clay jewelry. You don't need a fiery forge and precious metals to make jewelry that sells. Polymer clay and epoxy resin have taken over the market because the barrier to entry is low, but the skill ceiling is incredibly high. You can mold and bake lightweight, modern clay earrings in your kitchen oven, or you mix 2-part epoxy resin, drop in some dried flowers or gold flakes, and cast them in silicone molds to make pendants. The trick is finding a unique, slightly edgy style so your stuff doesn't look like a middle school art project. Once you nail the aesthetic, you can mass-produce these on your kitchen table and sell them at craft fairs with a massive markup. Hobby 29. Artisan soap making. Mass-produced soap is basically just harsh detergent that strips your skin and smells like a chemical factory. People are actively seeking out cold-process, handmade soap. It involves mixing lye, water, and rich fats like shea butter or olive oil. It is basically a chemistry experiment in your kitchen. You add natural exfoliants like coffee grounds or oatmeal, scent it with real essential oils, and pour it into molds. After it cures for a month, you cut it into thick, rustic bars. It's a consumable product, which means once a customer buys it and loves it, they have to come back to you when it washes down the drain. It is the perfect recurring revenue model. Hobby 30. Masculine candle making. The candle market is saturated with vanilla, lavender, and overwhelming floral scents, but there is a massive, underserved demographic of men and women who want their house to smell like a moody speakeasy. You buy soy wax, wooden wicks that crackle like a tiny fireplace, and fragrance oils. But instead of flowers, you mix scents like aged bourbon, worn leather, tobacco leaves, and old library books. You pour them into matte black jars or vintage amber glass. You are selling an aesthetic, a vibe, a man cave accessory. The wax is cheap, the process is simple, and the branding allows you to charge premium prices for a product you melted on your stovetop.
Well, there it is. 30 ways to stop whining about the economy and actually do something about it. I've given you the map, but I can't walk the road for you. You're going to turn off this screen, go look at your empty garage, and make a choice. Are you going to build something, or are you just going to keep decaying quietly? Make a move, skin bag. The clock is ticking.
He's not wrong, you know. The world isn't going to hand you a golden parachute, so you might as well weave your own out of leather, wood, or beeswax. Find the thing that you actually enjoy doing, get irrationally good at it, and let other people fund your obsession. Thanks for watching. If you actually learned something today, hit the like button. If you are going to ignore all this advice and go back to scrolling, hit subscribe anyway so we can yell at you again next week. Get to work.